Okay, well, I'll give you a blast from the past real quick, Court, and I'll tell you this. After playing in the Super Bowl, arguably the biggest game in all of sports, you're asked questions. You're in the moment. You're frustrated. You don't even know how your emotions is able to be interpreted. And for me, I did not have the best professional way of going about that. Some would say immature, some would say that's not right, some would say this, some would say that. But what I would say is this: I deserve the ridicule. I deserve so much that I knew who I was and I knew how I was supposed to handle that situation. And I also was the starting quarterback. Anytime people talk about Shedeur Sanders, it's almost like they give a pretense. And it sounds like this: hey, I'm a Shedeur Sanders fan. And I'll give you another analogy to that. Anytime a person stops a person or reminds anybody to say, hey, I don't mean to be disrespectful, typically they're about to say something disrespectful.
And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where we begin tonight. Because the real question isn't just about who the Browns are starting at quarterback. The real question is this: do the Cleveland Browns actually want Shedeur Sanders to succeed? Or are they setting him up for failure before he even has a chance to step on the field? Think about it. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl champion, gets benched after just 4 games. Dylan Gabriel, a rookie, gets elevated to QB1, thrown to the Wolves in London against the Minnesota Vikings. And Shedeur Sanders? Stuck at QB3, answering questions in press conferences usually reserved for guys who actually matter on Sunday. But when the mic hit him, when the reporters pressed him, Shadur didn't give them a soundbite. He didn't give them the PC answer. He didn't give them the classic, just waiting for my chance speech. Instead, he shrugged, pantomimed, and left the NFL world buzzing. And that silence? That pantomime? It said everything. Cam Newton, who knows better than anyone what it means to be the face of a franchise, came out swinging. He said what a lot of people are too scared to admit: Cleveland has not put Shadur in a position to succeed. Period. And if we're being real, Cam might be right. Newton reminded us of his own Super Bowl moment, when the questions came flying after a brutal loss. He admitted he didn't always handle it the right way, but at least he was the starter. Shedur's not even playing, yet every little thing he does, every shrug, every smirk, every pause at the podium, becomes national news. Because he's Deion Sanders' son. Because he's Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback who turned Colorado football into a phenomenon. Because he carries a brand bigger than half the league's backups combined. And you can hear the frustration in Cam's voice. I don't think the Cleveland Browns really want him to succeed. Now let me ask you this: if your organization really wanted a young quarterback to grow, would you make him QB3 behind a 39-year-old Joe Flacco and a rookie who just arrived? Or would you be grooming him for the future, putting him in position to compete, giving him every rep he could possibly get? And that's where this controversy gets wild. Because Shedeur Sanders is being held to a standard no other QB3 in the NFL faces. Be honest with yourself right now. Can you name your team's third-string quarterback? Can you name any third-string quarterback in the NFL? Of course not. Nobody cares. So I'll ask you, the audience, do the Browns actually want Shedeur Sanders to succeed, or are they scared of what happens if he does? But with Shadur, cameras are in his face every week. Every press conference is dissected. Every mannerism is turned into a headline. And Cam Newton pointed out the double standard perfectly. He said the same quirks that make people love a guy like Jackson Dart are the exact things critics tear Shadur apart for. When Jackson Dart shows personality, it's swagger. When Shadur does it, it's immature. The NFL doesn't just want Shadur to play football. They want him to fit into a box. And when he doesn't, they tear him down. Now let's bring Ryan Clark into the mix. Because RC isn't just an analyst. He's a man who lived this league from the inside. And he made it clear, the way Shedeur Sanders is being covered is unfair. Clark said it straight. The criticism? It's not just about football. It's about who Shadur is, what he represents, and yes, who his father is. The attention, the money, the partnerships, the nil deals, the Colorado stardom, it all comes with baggage. It all paints a target on his back. And when anonymous sources trashed him before the draft, saying vague things about his attitude or his meetings, that wasn't about skill. That was about image. That was about people who didn't want to deal with the circus that comes with a Sanders. But here's the thing. Shadur did turn Colorado into a national story. He did bring millions of eyes to college football. He did prove he could carry a program into relevance overnight. And now that spotlight follows him into Cleveland whether the Browns like it or not. So let me ask you again. If Shedeur Sanders wasn't Deion's son, would we even be having this conversation right now?
Okay, well, I'll give you a blast from the past real quick, Court, and I'll tell you this. After playing in the Super Bowl, arguably the biggest game in all of sports, you'll ask questions. You're in the moment. You're frustrated. You don't even know how your emotions is able to be interpreted. And for me, I did not have the best professional way of going about that. Some would say immature, some would say that's not right, some would say this, some would say that. But what I would say is this: I deserve the ridicule. I deserve so much that I knew who I was and I knew how I was supposed to handle that situation. And I also was the starting quarterback. Anytime people talk about Shedeur Sanders, it's almost like they give a pretense. And it sounds like this: hey, I'm a Shedeur Sanders fan. And I'll give you another analogy to that. Anytime a person stops a person or reminds anybody to say, hey, I don't mean to be disrespectful, typically they're about to say something disrespectful. So when you're saying something, right, so when you're saying certain things in regards to Shedeur Sanders, how is he supposed to go about it?
And that's the brutal truth. NFL front offices hate distractions. They hate when the backup quarterback becomes the headline. And right now, in Cleveland, Shedeur Sanders is bigger news than Dylan Gabriel and Joe Flacco combined. Think about how crazy that is. Gabriel is making his first NFL start. Flacco just got benched. Those should be the stories, right? Wrong. The only name anyone's talking about is Shadur. And Cam Newton warned him that spotlight cuts both ways. If you embrace it, if you lean into it, you're feeding the narrative that coaches and GMs are terrified of. They don't want a third-string quarterback overshadowing the starters. They don't want every press conference turning into a Shadur circus. But here's the flip side. What's Shadur supposed to do? Stay silent? Pretend he doesn't exist? He's damned if he does, damned if he doesn't. When Shedeur Sanders sneezes, it's a headline. When Dylan Gabriel starts in London, it's an afterthought. And that right there tells you everything you need to know about the power of his name, his brand, and why this controversy won't stop anytime soon. But let's not ignore Cam's other point. Because when he looked straight into the camera and said, "This is why teams didn't want him, it has nothing to do with skill," he was saying what scouts whispered behind closed doors all offseason. And here's the kicker, he's right. Nobody denies Shedur's arm. Nobody denies his accuracy. Nobody denies his ability to extend plays. But the media storm that follows him? That's the problem. That's the baggage. So I've got a question for you, the viewers. Would you take the talent and deal with the circus? Or would you pass on a quarterback like Shadur to avoid the noise? And now the tension in Cleveland builds. Because this isn't just about football anymore. It's about image. It's about control. It's about whether the Browns are willing to let Shadur be Shadur, or whether they'd rather bury him on the depth chart, keep the cameras off him, and hope the storm passes. But here's the thing, storms don't pass when you're Shedeur Sanders. They grow. They get louder. And whether Cleveland likes it or not, this kid's story is going to dominate every headline until he either gets his chance, or gets run out of town. Now, let's get back to Cleveland. Because while all this noise is swirling around Shedeur Sanders, the Browns still have a football team to run. Dylan Gabriel is starting in London. Joe Flacco, a Super Bowl champion, is holding a clipboard. And somehow, the only name that matters to the media is Shedeur Sanders. And that's exactly what Cam Newton warned us about. He said it clearly, teams didn't want Shadur not because of his arm, not because of his decision-making, not because of anything on the field, but because they didn't want a third-string quarterback to overshadow the team. Well, guess what? That's exactly what's happening in Cleveland. Let me put this in perspective for you. If you're Dylan Gabriel, imagine how it feels. You just got elevated to QB1. You're about to make your very first NFL start in London against the Vikings. This should be the biggest moment of your life. Every headline, every story, every debate show should be about you. But no. Instead, all the noise is about the guy sitting behind you on the depth chart. Shedeur Sanders, QB3. So here's the question for you. If you were Dylan Gabriel, would you be frustrated that Shedur's shadow is bigger than your spotlight? Or would you embrace the competition and use it as fuel? Now let's talk about Joe Flacco. A man who's been there, done that. He's won a Super Bowl. He's led playoff runs. And in Cleveland, after 4 games, he's already been pushed aside. Normally, that's a huge story. Benching a veteran like Flacco should dominate the headlines. But again, it's drowned out by Shedeur Sanders. When a Super Bowl MVP gets benched, it should be front-page news. But in Cleveland, it barely cracks the conversation, because Shedeur Sanders exists. And that's the reality. This isn't about football anymore. It's about the gravitational pull of a name, of a brand, of a story too big to ignore. Now, let's bring it back to Ryan Clark. Because RC made an important point that can't be overlooked. He said, Shedeur Sanders is going to be criticized no matter what. And he's right. If Shadur gives a soundbite, he's cocky. If he shrugs and pantomimes, he's immature. If he stays silent, he's aloof. No matter what lane he takes, the critics are waiting with sharpened knives. And that's the reality Shadur has to live in. A reality where every movement is judged harsher, every word is dissected deeper, every pause at the podium is turned into a headline. So I'll throw it back to you. Do you think Shadur should play the game safe and give the media those boring, PC answers? Or should he stay true to himself and let the critics deal with it? Think about how powerful that is. Cam Newton isn't just some analyst with an opinion. He lived this life. He knows what it means when the media turns on you. He knows what it's like when your personality becomes the story instead of your play. And when he said, "This is why teams didn't want Shadur," it wasn't an insult. It was a warning. A warning that the NFL doesn't just draft players. It drafts brands. It drafts personalities. And some teams are terrified of everything that comes with Shedeur Sanders. The NFL can handle talent. What it can't handle is a star who shines brighter than the shield itself. But let's get real for a second. Is that Shedur's fault? Or is that the league's insecurity? Because here's the truth. If Shedeur Sanders goes out there and balls out, none of this matters. Talent trumps drama every single time. If he gets a chance and proves himself, all these so-called circus worries fade into the background. The only reason this conversation exists is because Cleveland won't let him on the field. They'd rather let him rot at QB3 than risk the noise that comes with giving him the reins. So again, I ask you, do the Browns actually want Shedeur Sanders to succeed, or are they keeping him buried so they don't have to deal with what comes next? And let's not forget the bigger picture here. This isn't just about Cleveland. This is about the entire league. Every GM, every scout, every coach who looked at Shadur and thought, we don't want that spotlight in our building. But guess what? That spotlight is coming whether they like it or not. The NFL has always thrived on stars. Brady, Mahomes, Rodgers. They weren't just quarterbacks, they were brands. They were storylines bigger than the game. And Shedeur Sanders? He's walking into the league with that same kind of energy. The only difference? He hasn't gotten his shot yet. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Cam Newton said something else that should have Browns fans on edge. He said, everything we've seen in the last 3 weeks is why some teams didn't want him. It has nothing to do with talent. So let me flip the question. If it has nothing to do with talent, then how long can Cleveland really keep him off the field? Because eventually, fans won't just want to see Dylan Gabriel. They'll start chanting for Shadur. They'll start demanding that the kid with the name, the brand, and the arm gets his chance. The Browns might think they're controlling the story, but sooner or later, the story will control them. So where does this leave us? We've got Joe Flacco, benched and forgotten. We've got Dylan Gabriel, thrust into the fire in London, but barely part of the conversation. And we've got Shedeur Sanders, QB3, who hasn't thrown a single NFL pass yet, and somehow, he's the biggest headline in the league. This isn't just football. This is reality TV. This is drama. This is the NFL at its most controversial. And here's the final question I'll leave you with tonight. Do the Browns want Shedeur Sanders to succeed, or are they terrified of what happens if he actually does? And that, my friends, is why this story isn't going away. It's only going to grow louder. Because Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback. He's a symbol. He's a headline. He's the walking controversy that the NFL can't take its eyes off of. And whether Cleveland likes it or not, his time is coming. This has been Gridiron Insights, your home for the real stories, the raw drama, and the controversies that the NFL doesn't want you to talk about. If you enjoyed this breakdown, if you've got strong feelings on Shedeur Sanders, the Browns, or the chaos brewing in Cleveland, drop your thoughts in the comments. We read them all, and we want to hear from you. And don't forget, hit that like button, smash that subscribe, and join the Gridiron Insights community, where we bring you the drama, the truth, and the game behind the game. Because trust me, this story is just getting started.